Welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to guide you through this today because we're going to uncover the hidden biological and, honestly, the corporate reasons why your favorite snacks seem mathematically impossible to put down. Look, if you've ever felt completely trapped by your own cravings, you're definitely going to want to pay close attention to this. So let's just dive right in.
We've all been there, right? We've all felt that weird mix of satisfaction and guilt after polishing off an entire bag of chips or a whole sleeve of cookies. Just sitting there wondering, why couldn't I just have a handful? But what if I told you your craving was never actually a flaw in your own willpower? What if that total loss of control is exactly what the product was literally engineered to do to you?
And this perfectly illustrates where the whole thing begins. Just look at the contrast between natural foods and our core biological cravings. On the left side, you've got real, whole foods. An apple is incredibly sweet, sure, but it has almost zero fat. A steak is rich and fatty and packed with protein, but it has absolutely no sugar. In nature, foods almost never combine high fat and high sugar together. But breast milk, the very first thing human beings are biologically wired to crave, brings high fat and high sugar together at the exact same time.
To your brain, that rare combo triggers the ultimate survival signal. It basically screams, eat as much as you can. Because a combination like that was so impossibly rare in the natural world, our brains evolved to see it as the holy grail of survival food. So when you bite into a modern donut, your brain gets the exact same biological signal it gets from breast milk. It literally thinks, jackpot, this is going to keep us alive. And since a food that dense was so rare in nature, our biology never actually bothered to build an off switch.
Enter Harvard psychophysicist Howard Moskowitz. This guy figured out how to weaponize that biological drive by calculating a metric he famously called the Bliss Point. Now, the Bliss Point isn't some happy culinary accident. It's the exact scientifically calculated amount of an ingredient, like sugar, salt, or fat, where your brain's craving hits an absolute peak before becoming overwhelming. Too little, and you want more. Too much, and it gets gross. But right at that perfect peak, your brain's reward center gets perfectly, undeniably hooked.
To prove this, Moskowitz was brought in to save a failing pasta sauce brand called Prego. He tested 45 different versions of their sauce and found out something crazy. People actually have no idea what they want, and they definitely don't share one universal bliss point. Instead, our cravings split into very distinct clusters. Some want plain, some want spicy, some want extra chunky. Moskowitz proved that instead of trying to find one magic recipe, companies should engineer entire product lines to hook all these different clusters. This is exactly how you spot modern product strategies on store shelves today. When you see an aisle with 20 different variations of the exact same chip, that is Bliss Point engineering right in front of your eyes.
That single scientific insight into human cravings generated a staggering $600 million for Prego's extra chunky sauce alone. Let that sink in. It was so unbelievably profitable that it completely revolutionized modern supermarkets. It's the exact reason why today we have 18 kinds of mustard and entire massive aisles dedicated entirely to breakfast cereal.
Section 1. Bypassing the satiety signal, how junk food erases itself. Because you see, hitting the bliss point was really only half the battle. If a food tastes amazing but fills you up quickly, you'll still stop eating. The industry had to figure out a way to completely bypass your biological fullness signals.
Which brings us to this fascinating and honestly slightly terrifying concept: vanishing caloric density. Food scientists literally engineered snacks, think cheese puffs or ultra-thin chips, that dissolve almost the millisecond they touch your tongue. By melting away so incredibly fast, they trick your brain into quietly concluding that you haven't actually eaten anything at all. The food essentially erases the physical evidence of itself.
Let's break down exactly how this physical bypass works against you. Step 1. You eat this highly engineered, super soft food that barely requires chewing. Step 2. Your biology kicks in, but you have a natural 20-minute delay from your stomach to your brain. It just takes that long for your stomach to send the memo that it's full. Step 3. The brain finally gets the stop signal. But because this junk food is so soft and lightning fast to swallow, it effortlessly wins the race against your stomach's 20-minute clock.
And the consequence of that is just wild. By the time your brain finally throws up the stop sign, you've already housed 1,000 calories. You're consuming thousands of calories in the exact blind spot it takes for your natural fullness signals to arrive. Which means, when it comes to ultra-processed foods, you literally cannot trust your own hunger. Your body's alarm system is just way too slow for what you're shoveling into it.
Section 2. The brain's tolerance. Chasing the shrinking pleasure. Over time, this constant barrage of perfectly engineered vanishing food doesn't just bypass your stomach, it fundamentally alters how your brain's internal reward center operates.
In this scenario, tolerance is your brain's diminishing reward response to highly processed foods. A really interesting brain scan study of healthy teenagers drinking milkshakes showed this perfectly. Scientists found that the more often these kids ate ice cream, the weaker their brain's reward reaction actually was. The reward center barely lit up for the frequent eaters. That is a textbook symptom of tolerance.
I think this quote captures it beautifully. You chase the feeling, and the feeling keeps shrinking. Just like with any addictive substance, the very first hit is always the strongest. After that, your brain turns its own pleasure signals down to protect itself from getting overwhelmed, and that biologically forces you to eat more and more of the product just to get back to the baseline pleasure you felt the very first time.
Section 3. The Masterminds. A hidden corporate takeover. Now, you might be wondering, who actually figured all of this out? Well, it turns out these strategies weren't cooked up by culinary chefs, but by seasoned experts in human addiction.
Back in the 1980s, the tobacco industry, fresh off a literal masterclass in engineering cigarette addiction, spent billions buying up massive food brands like Kraft. They took the exact same labs, the same chemists, the same addiction strategies, and pointed them directly at your dinner plate. The public health impact of this crossover has been completely devastating, basically shifting the mechanics of addiction from the lungs right down to the stomach. Then, in 1999, a senior Kraft executive actually warned the food industry that their products were driving a massive obesity epidemic. And finally, in 2019, we got the undeniable scientific proof from Kevin Hall's clinical study.
But going back to that 1999 warning for a second, it was completely buried. The recipes never changed. Even when they were staring at data proving their products were fueling a public health crisis, the executives in that room actively chose to do nothing. Engineering your cravings was simply too profitable to stop.
Section 4. The Proof in the Lab. The 2019 Kevin Hall study. For decades, the industry hid behind the excuse that it was impossible to track what these foods did to people long-term. I mean, you can't just follow someone around for years weighing everything they eat. That is, until scientist Kevin Hall ran a groundbreaking clinical study in 2019.
Hall basically locked 20 adults in a lab for a month. He let them eat as much or as little as they wanted, but halfway through he completely switched their diets from whole foods to ultra-processed foods. For 2 weeks on a real whole food diet, stuff like roast beef, fresh veggies, and rice, participants naturally lost weight. But for the 2 weeks they were on an ultra-processed diet of cereal, chips, and Pop-Tarts, the exact same people packed the weight right back on.
And the absolute most staggering metric from this: 500 extra calories. Without even trying to eat more, and without reporting feeling any hungrier, the participants unconsciously downed an extra 500 calories every single day on the processed diet. The food did exactly what it was designed to do. It slipped right past every biological defense they had. Which brings us to this seriously empowering realization. Your craving was never the flaw. It is a brilliant survival system running exactly as it was designed to run, but operating in a modern environment it was never built for. The fact that participants lost weight on whole foods and gained it on processed foods proves that your struggle is not a personal failure of willpower. It's literally your survival biology reacting perfectly to a carefully engineered corporate trap.
I love how this quote sums it up. A rigged game only works for as long as the person being played can't see it. Every natural biological defense you had was systematically studied in a lab, defeated, and then sold right back to you. You were in a fight that was never, ever meant to be fair.
So now that you can clearly see the game, how are you going to play it? To break this engineered cycle, we have to start building some practical habits. First, make a simple weekly plan to swap out those vanishing snacks for real food. Try batch cooking a Sunday roast beef with some rice and fresh veggies so you actually have a healthy meal ready to go. When you're grocery shopping, avoid those middle aisles entirely. That's where the Bliss Point products are hiding, and stick to the perimeter where the fresh single-ingredient foods live. And crucially, read those package labels. You have to protect yourself from hidden sugars disguised under names like high-fructose corn syrup, maltodextrin, dextrose, and sucrose. Once you recognize these corporate tricks, you take all your power back. You are never losing a battle against yourself. What you do with this knowledge next is entirely up to you. So, how will you fuel yourself tomorrow?